Welcome to Dice and Quills, where the art of storytelling meets the roll of the dice. I am Darren Ruckle, professional game master and TTRPG writer, here to share the craft behind world building, adventure design, and running unforgettable games. Whether you're a fellow creator, an aspiring pro, or a lifelong player, you're in the right place. So sharpen your quills, ready your dice, and let's dive into the worlds we imagine. Today, we're talking about one of the most deceptively difficult formats in tabletop role-playing, the one-shot. I love one-shots. I run a lot of them, and I've learned this. A one-shot isn't just a short campaign. It's not just a session with an ending. It's its own thing, and when it works, it sings. But when it doesn't, it drags, it confuses, or worse, it ends with the players saying, "Wait, that was it?" This episode is about avoiding that. About crafting one-shots that land, ones that feel complete, satisfying, and worth the evening you've carved out for them. Because here's the truth, most bad one-shots fail not because of bad ideas, but because of bad structure. A one-shot is a container, a very small one. You have limited time, limited space, and no guarantee of a second session. That means you need to design with precision, with intention, and, paradoxically, with restraint. This episode will walk you through the framework I use to build one-shots that hit. We'll cover how to structure the session, how to pace the plot, how to handle character arcs, and why clarity matters more in one-shots than anywhere else. And here's the promise. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what separates a forgettable one-shot from one that lingers. Not just in your players' minds, but in their calendars. Because when a one-shot works, players come back for more. Let's start at the beginning. Not with plot, not with twists, with time. What does it actually mean to build a story that fits inside 4 hours and leaves players feeling like they just lived something complete? It starts with time. A one-shot is not a 4-hour story. It's a 3-hour story with setup, player chatter, rules reminders, late arrivals, and wrap-up. Most one-shots, if you're lucky, have about 2.5 hours of real narrative space. That's your container. If your story doesn't fit in that box, it won't land. So the first thing you do when designing a one-shot is limit the shape. You need a clean arc, something that opens, escalates, and resolves. Not perfectly, not with every thread tied off, but with enough closure that the players feel like they finished something. That means no sprawling mysteries, no 10-step plans, no 4-faction politics. You're not writing season 3 of a show, you're writing a really good pilot. The easiest way to structure a one-shot is to build it around 3 beats, an inciting incident, a turning point, and a final confrontation. That's it. 3 major moments. Not 5, not 7, 3. And each one should drive the players forward without requiring hours of backtracking or sandbox exploration. This is why dungeons work so well in one-shots. They're naturally linear. They give players choices, but those choices happen within a confined space. That doesn't mean you have to run a dungeon, but it does mean your story should move forward. Your players should never be asking, "What are we supposed to do?" They should be asking, "How are we going to pull this off?" That's momentum. That's pacing. And in a one-shot, that's everything. The next piece is clarity. One-shots fall apart when players don't know what they're doing or why it matters. So you give them a goal right away. Steal the gem. Stop the ritual. Survive the night. Rescue the hostage. You don't have time for slow reveals. You don't have time for vague setups. You tell them what the stakes are and what they're trying to do, and then you let the obstacles get in their way. Next, we're going to talk about characters, because the best one-shots aren't just tight. They're personal. They give the players a reason to care, fast. And that starts with the right kind of characters, brought to the table with the right kind of tools. Characters are the emotional fuel of your one-shot. You don't need deep backstories or elaborate arcs, but you do need motivation. Why is this character here? Why do they care? And most importantly, how can they express that within 2 hours of gameplay? Pre-generated characters can be a huge advantage here. When you make them yourself, you can tie them directly into the story. You can bake in connections, rivalries, secrets, and hooks. You can ensure that every player has a reason to engage from scene 1. But even if you're letting players bring their own characters, you need to ask the right questions up front. What's your character's goal? What do they want out of this mission? What are they afraid of? Those answers shape the emotional stakes of the story, and emotional stakes matter more in a one-shot than they do in some campaigns, because you don't have time to build slow investment. You need to light the fire early. This is also why it helps to include small, immediate decisions right away. Let players make a moral call. Let them decide how to approach the first obstacle. Let them feel ownership of the tone. The sooner they're acting with intention, the sooner they're immersed. And if you can, build at least one NPC who matters, someone they can care about, root for, or protect. Give that NPC a name, a point of view, and a connection to the mission. It doesn't have to be deep, but it has to be felt. Because NPCs ground the world, they make the consequences visible, and they give the players someone to react to besides each other. We've talked about time, we've talked about structure, we've talked about characters. Now let's get into tension. Because a one-shot without urgency feels like a shrug. And urgency is what turns a functional one-shot into a great one. Urgency is the pulse of your one-shot. It's what keeps the players moving forward, what keeps decisions sharp, what makes every moment feel like it matters. Without urgency, even a well-structured one-shot can feel slow, meandering, or worse, forgettable. There are a few ways to build urgency. The most effective is the ticking clock. Something bad is going to happen, and the players have limited time to stop it. That could be literal, an exploding device, a summoning ritual, a deadline, or it could be narrative, an assassin closing in, a storm rolling through, a rival crew beating them to the prize. The point is, time matters. Waiting isn't free. Another tool is escalating threats. A good one-shot doesn't just maintain tension, it raises it. The first fight might be straightforward, the second introduces complications, the third throws everything sideways. If the players feel like the stakes are increasing, they lean in, they start to ask smarter questions, they start to take risks. A third method is consequence. Players need to believe their choices matter, even in a one-shot. That doesn't mean elaborate branching outcomes, but it does mean payoff. If they make a deal in Act 1, let it come back in Act 3. If they fail to stop something, let it cost them later. You're not just telling a story, you're building a cause and effect chain that feels real in the moment. Urgency doesn't mean rushing, it doesn't mean breathless pacing or constant combat. It means pressure, presence, the sense that something important is unfolding and they're in the middle of it. Next, we're going to talk about endings. Because the biggest failure point in most one-shots isn't the beginning or the middle, it's the end. And ending well is what turns a decent one-shot into a memorable one. Endings are everything. A one-shot lives or dies by its final 10 minutes. Players don't remember how long you spent on travel scenes or exposition. They remember how it ended, what it meant, what they accomplished, and how they felt walking away from the table. A strong one-shot ending doesn't need to be clever, it needs to be clear. The players should know what success looks like, what failure means, and what's at stake when they make their final decisions. If they're still asking what they're supposed to do in the last act, something went wrong in the setup. This is where the 3-act structure pays off. Your final confrontation should feel like a culmination. It should tie back to the goal you gave them at the start. It should reflect the choices they made, the risks they took, and the tone you've established. It doesn't have to be a boss fight, but it does need weight. One of the best ways to land the ending is to ask a simple question as the dust settles. What does your character do now? That question turns a tactical scene into a narrative one. It reminds the players that their character has a future, even if we'll never play it out. That's where the emotional punch lives. If the ending is open-ended, let it be meaningful. If they saved the town, show the town reacting. If they failed to stop the ritual, let the world start to crack. If they chose between two bad options, let that choice haunt them. Resolution doesn't mean neat, it means earned. And most importantly, end on purpose. Don't let the session run over, drift into awkward silence, or fade out with a half-hearted, "I guess that's it." Take control. Say, "And that's where we end." Give them a moment to breathe, then let them reflect. That reflection, those last 5 minutes of post-game discussion, is where the story becomes a memory. Next, we'll cover common traps GMs fall into when designing one-shots, and how to avoid the mistakes that slow pacing, confuse players, or kill momentum entirely. Let's talk about the traps. The mistakes that turn a promising one-shot into a chaotic mess, a dull crawl, or worse, a total derailment. These traps aren't about bad ideas. They're about misjudging the format. One-shots aren't just short campaigns. They have different needs. The first trap is starting too slow. You don't have time for a quiet village, a tavern scene, and 3 NPCs with vague side quests. Start with action or immediacy. Not necessarily combat, but tension. Drop the players into the middle of something, a theft gone wrong, a body on the floor, a mysterious signal, anything that creates motion and gives them a reason to act right away. The second trap is too many twists. Twists are great in longer campaigns where you've had time to establish expectations. In a one-shot, you're still building the framework. One twist, maybe 2 if you're subtle, is plenty. Any more, and you're undercutting the story you haven't finished telling yet. The third trap is too many locations. Every time you move the players to a new place, you lose time. Descriptions, travel scenes, setup. It all adds friction. Keep your geography tight. A one-shot should take place in 1 main location, or 2 at most. A city district, a single manor, a crashed ship, a jungle temple. Let the environment be varied, but don't sprawl. Sprawl kills momentum. The fourth trap is sandbox thinking. A one-shot is not the time to say, you can go anywhere and do anything. That's a setup for indecision and wasted minutes. Players need direction, clear stakes, defined options. That doesn't mean railroading. It means structure, guardrails, not choke points. The fifth trap is overplanning. You write a 10-room dungeon and they only get through 3. You build 5 combat encounters and only use 2. Don't build volume, build flexibility. Design scenes that can be compressed, expanded, or skipped entirely. And if something's not working, don't force it. Keep the pacing in mind, not the prep you're trying to justify. Avoiding these traps doesn't limit your creativity. It frees it. You're building something tight, focused, and intentional. Not rushed, not chaotic, not overstuffed. Just right-sized for the story it wants to tell. Next, we're going to explore some ways to turn a good one-shot into a great one. The touches of craft, presentation, and design that leave a lasting impression. So how do you elevate a one-shot? How do you move from something that simply functions to something that resonates? It starts with presentation. The way you introduce the premise matters. Don't just hand them a quest, deliver a hook. Set the tone with confidence. Instead of saying, you're hired to find someone, say, you're already ankle deep in the marsh, the guide's gone missing, and something's moving in the fog. The way you start sets the expectation for how the rest of the night will feel. Next is thematic unity. Even in a 2-hour story, theme can do a lot of heavy lifting. Maybe your one-shot is about survival. Maybe it's about deception, vengeance, redemption. Whatever it is, let the scenes echo that theme. Let NPCs reflect it. Let the choices highlight it. Players may not articulate it, but they'll feel the cohesion. You can also enhance a one-shot with sensory detail. Don't overdo it. You're still on a clock. But a few sharp images can anchor the atmosphere. The way the candles gutter when the ghost enters, the smell of salt and blood in the airlock, the distant tolling of a bell no one remembers lighting. These are moments that land without slowing you down. Music can help if used well. Soundscapes can reinforce mood, especially in horror, sci-fi, or fantasy. Just don't spend time fiddling with playlists mid-session. If you use audio, prep it. Set it, forget it, and let it do its job. Props, handouts, even a quick map can help, but they're not required. The real tool that elevates your one-shot is rhythm. Knowing when to push, when to breathe, when to raise the stakes, and when to stop talking so the table can react. And finally, don't underestimate the power of debrief. After the session ends, ask what they liked. Ask what stuck. Let the group talk about the moments that hit. That reflection helps players lock in the experience. And it helps you sharpen your craft. A great one-shot doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to land with intention. Clean, bold, contained, and when it does, players walk away saying the words every GM wants to hear. That was awesome, I'd play that again. Next, we'll look at how to design one-shots for different purposes. Whether you're showcasing your GM skills, introducing new players, or testing ideas for a future campaign. Not all one-shots serve the same purpose. The structure may be similar, but your intent should shape your design. A one-shot you're running to showcase your skills as a GM is going to look different than one meant to test a new system, onboard new players, or pilot a campaign concept. Let's start with showcase one-shots. These are often public games, paid sessions, or auditions. The goal is to demonstrate what kind of GM you are and what kind of experience players can expect from you. Here, you want clarity, momentum, and a strong tone. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to prove that you can keep it turning. Showcase your strengths. If you excel at tension, build a mystery. If you thrive on comedy, let the structure support improvisation. You're not trying to show everything. You're trying to show one thing clearly and confidently. Now, onboarding one-shots. These are for new players or players new to a system. The key here is accessibility. Don't overload them with rules. Don't drown them in lore. Build something tight, immediate, and easy to grasp. You want fast feedback loops. Players take an action and see the result right away. This builds confidence. Keep the mechanics light, the tone welcoming, and the choices impactful but simple. The success of this one-shot is measured by how many players say, "I want to play again." Then there's the pilot one-shot. The quiet campaign test. You're not saying this is the start of a series, but you're designing with the option open. You want a self-contained story that also plants seeds. A mystery that could deepen. A villain who could return. A world worth exploring. The ending has closure, but also possibility. If players ask what happens next, that's your cue that the pilot worked. Sometimes your one-shot is just for fun. A holiday special, a horror break, a chaotic palate cleanser between campaign arcs. That's valid too. But even here, design with intention. Know what kind of fun you're aiming for, and keep the scope tight. Silly doesn't mean sloppy. Designing for purpose doesn't mean overcomplicating. It means choosing the right tools for the job and cutting the ones that don't serve that specific goal. Next, we'll break down how to adapt one-shots on the fly when players throw curveballs, eat up your time, or derail your carefully plotted arc with a single wild decision. Every one-shot is a plan waiting to be disrupted. Your pacing can be perfect, your structure locked in, and then one unexpected decision turns the whole session sideways. That's not failure. That's play. But you need to be ready to adapt. The first thing to accept is that you will almost always need to cut something. That subplot you wrote, that extra encounter, that cool NPC with the monologue, you'll probably need to let it go. Your job is to preserve the spine of the story, the escalation, the payoff, everything else is flexible. So how do you adapt on the fly? Start by tracking your time. Know what time you started the actual game, not just the chat. Keep an eye on the clock. You should hit your midpoint no later than 90 minutes in. If you're still in Act 1 after 2 hours, you're not finishing. You need to skip, compress, combine. That shopkeeper and the mysterious stranger, they're now the same person. That dungeon with 5 rooms, you pick 2. Next, look for narrative pivots. If the players skip your hook or sidestep your plan, don't panic, reroute. Keep the stakes intact and shift the framing. If they refuse the job, have someone else steal it first. If they miss the clue, let a rival team act on it and raise the stakes. The point is to keep motion going. Sometimes you need to jump ahead. You don't have to play every scene. If the players are circling a conversation that's going nowhere, move forward. Say, 3 hours later, you arrive at the ritual site. The sky is already tearing. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just pivot with confidence. And if things really go off the rails, let go of the perfect version. You're not here to hit every beat. You're here to deliver a satisfying experience. That means tension, choice, and closure, not completing your outline. Sometimes the players outsmart the final boss. Sometimes they fail spectacularly. Sometimes they do something wild that rewrites your ending. Let it happen. Guide it to a landing. Improvise your way to an ending that still feels earned. Your prep is there to give you options, not to lock you in. Next, we'll close out the episode with a recap of what makes a one-shot work, and why mastering this format sharpens every other part of your GM craft. Let's bring it all together. A one-shot isn't just a short campaign, it's a specific format with unique demands. It asks for precision, clarity, and intention. You don't have time to wander, time to recover from pacing errors, or time to explain away confusion. What you have is a window, about 3 hours of focused play, to deliver something that feels like a complete story. That means starting strong, giving the players a reason to care, a clear objective, and a world that demands action. It means structuring your session around 3 major beats: escalation, complication, and climax. And it means knowing that you'll probably have to cut something along the way. That's not failure, that's design. Characters matter, motivation matters, urgency matters. You don't need a big twist or a shocking reveal. You need to make sure the players know why their decisions matter and that their actions shape the outcome. Endings matter most. Players remember how things ended, how the story closed, how their characters changed, and what it all meant. Whether it's a final fight, a sacrifice, a choice, or a revelation, land it cleanly, then stop. Don't let the session drift. Let it close with purpose. If you want to level up as a GM, get good at one-shots. They sharpen your instincts. They force clarity. They teach you how to manage pacing, spotlight, and story economy. And when you run a great one, you'll hear the best feedback a GM can get. That felt like a whole story. I didn't expect that. Next time on Dice and Quills, we're diving into the art of spotlight balance, how to make sure every player gets their moment, even in chaotic, combat-heavy, or fast-paced games. Because sharing the table well isn't just a courtesy, it's a craft. If this episode helped you, consider sharing it, rating the podcast, or reaching out to let me know. I always love hearing your own approaches to one-shots, the wild ones that worked, and the ones that completely went off the rails. Until next time, sharpen your quills, ready your dice. And remember, a great one-shot doesn't need to do everything. It just needs to do one thing really well.